This is a 2020 BMW X6M, and the stats on this vehicle will just blow you away. Horsepower, 617 in an SUV. But here's the thing, I mean, if you go back just 20 years ago, performance SUVs weren't really a thing. SUVs were meant for off-roading or taking the kids to school or hauling a lot of stuff or towing a lot of stuff. They weren't meant to go fast in a straight line or really around the track. There were several early attempts at a performance SUV. Think vehicles like the Lamborghini LM002, the Jeep Grand Cherokee 5.9, and of course the Mercedes ML55 AMG. But if we're being honest, the Lamborghini was primarily an off-road vehicle with the longevity of a wet noodle. The Jeep Grand Cherokee went like heck in a straight line, and that's about it. And then the ML55, which was a pretty decent SUV, but let's be real, it was soccer mom first, performance is sort of an afterthought. In terms of all-around on-road handling and eccentric design and decent performance, in my opinion, the first performance SUV is the BMW X5 4.6. No, not the M model that came later, but this car. You're probably thinking, well, wouldn't the M be a better version? And yes, the X5M was much higher performance, it was much faster, but that was a second generation M5. This is a very first generation M5, the E53, and the IS was a limited run of performance versions of the E53. Now, under the hood, 4.6 liter V8, a standard X5 V8 would have had a 4.4, top speed of 150 miles an hour with a 340 horsepower V8, and there's a lot of unique styling differences that made this the first performance SUV. Check this out. We've got like these saber-tooth tiger shark fins in the front, which is an absolute crazy design trend. Here, if you look at the side, this is a 2002 model, 2002, with 20-inch wheels. And if you have any doubt whether or not this is a performance-oriented model, look at these rear tires. 315 35 R20s, 315 width tires back in 2002. That new X6M has 315s on it, and this car was doing it 17 years ago, which is absolutely berserk. And they had 315s with only 340 horsepower. Now, coming along the back, you have once again this crazy aggressive rear diffuser with the shark fins down the side and these little teeth in the middle. Big old exhaust, or actually quad exhaust. If you look down in there, you can actually see 4 pipes. But the E53 was a truly brilliant BMW. Now, standard models either had a 3-liter straight 6 or a 4.4 liter V8. They were surprisingly well made. It was BMW's first ever SUV, and it's, in my opinion, by far the best looking X5. Let's take a peek on the interior. So Matt, if you pan down there, you can see these running boards in this kind of brushed aluminum look, but take a look at these seats. These are really cool seats. So it's kind of like a cloth checkerboard insert with leather bolstering, but you sit in them and it's surprisingly supportive. We were still several years away from the full-on X5M version of this car. So this was an early look at what BMW was capable of in terms of performance SUVs, but a big old steering wheel with this great old-fashioned BMW. This is actually pre-iDrive, so you don't have the little toggle. This is a super early version of BMW's infotainment system. This car is a perfect size. I think the new X5M and the new X5s have grown to be kind of a little bit too big. This car is not big at all, and it's got some of the coolest gauges in the industry. They do look like genuine X gauges, or excuse me, genuine M style gauges. Pretty rad. Look, let's take a look at the rear seat. So the X5 was never targeted as an off-roader. It's a unibody construction. It doesn't have a low-range transfer case. It's got independent suspension all around. And BMW, what they did with this IS model is they said, look, if we're not going to be the ultimate off-roader in the SUV world, why don't we try to be the ultimate street performer? And that is exactly what they did. They carried over this checkerboard style cloth insert here in the rear. It's a really kind of an interesting look at old school BMW tech. In the back, you'll see the start of BMW's split tailgate, which is, I actually don't know. Oh, are you serious? Can you fold the seats using the buttons in the rear? Wow. That's pretty nuts. That is really nuts. Decent sized trunk, decent sized interior volume overall. And this is actually built here in South Carolina. So the X5 is currently built in South Carolina. This one was built there back in the early 2000s. I mean, even they had to go as far as to add fender flares. So yes, it's not a full-blown M. They weren't quite ready to venture into that world, but it's a pretty rad look at what was to come. As always, this is Tommy with the Fastlane Classics. Head over to tflcar.com for the latest and greatest in BMW classic reviews.